Welcome to Relationship Exposed. In today's video, we unravel the silent demise of a marriage, not torn apart by shouting matches or scandalous affairs, but by the kind of neglect that grows slowly, silently, until love becomes a ghost haunting the rooms of a shared home. This is the story of Bradley and Monica, a couple once bound by dreams, now held together only by habit, until a single photograph ripped away the veil of denial and exposed the truth neither of them wanted to face. Bradley had always believed that love didn't end with a crash. It just faded. That belief had carried him through the last few years of his marriage to Monica, a slow, silent drift apart. There were no loud fights, no dramatic confessions, just quiet dinners where silence filled the gaps once occupied by laughter. They were still under the same roof, still sharing the same bed. But their souls had stopped intertwining long ago. The house, once filled with Sunday morning pancakes and spontaneous movie nights, now echoed with separate routines. Monica would scroll through her phone for hours, headphones in, eyes glazed over. Bradley buried himself in work, late nights at the office, extra meetings, anything to avoid the oppressive silence that followed him home. Still, they had one tradition they clung to, an annual trip. It had become a habit rather than an adventure, but it was something, an attempt to rekindle the flicker of connection, or at the very least, pretend they still had something worth fighting for. Italy had been the destination for this year's trip. They had booked it months ago, made plans, even smiled at the thought of gelato in Florence and gondola rides in Venice. For Bradley, it wasn't just a vacation. It was a hope, a chance to reset, to breathe new life into what was left of them. But life has a cruel way of testing people at their most vulnerable. Just days before they were set to leave, Bradley received an urgent call from corporate headquarters. Nextback, the company he'd dedicated over a decade to, had hit a critical point. Their largest client in the food sector, Foodstream, was threatening to break their contract. Bradley was the only one trusted to present a new strategic proposal that could save the multi-million-dollar deal. This wasn't just another work trip. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. A career-defining presentation in Atlanta. A chance for promotion, recognition, the future he'd worked so hard for. He approached Monica that night, laptop closed, heart cautiously hopeful. "Monica," he began, carefully choosing his words. "I've been called to Atlanta for a big presentation. They want me to pitch the new sustainable packaging line to Foodstream. This could change everything. But it means I can't go to Italy, not this week, at least." He expected disappointment, maybe even anger. But deep down, he hoped she'd say, "Let's reschedule together," or "We can go next month," or simply, "Tell me more." Anything that showed she still cared. Instead, she sat in her chair, arms crossed, eyes never leaving the screen of her phone. Her tone was flat, emotionless. "Then go." "I'm still going. Everything's already booked." Bradley stood there, frozen, not by the words, but by the cold indifference that wrapped around them. 10 years of marriage, a decade of shared birthdays, quiet celebrations, mutual grief, and now she couldn't even look at him when he explained why he couldn't go. There was no sadness in her voice. No understanding. Just a quiet wall he couldn't break through. She left the room moments later. And with her, any hope Bradley had for that trip left too. The next morning, he boarded the plane to Atlanta with a divided heart. Half of him focused on the mission, reviving the contract and securing Nextback's future. The other half was stuck in a looping silence, wondering when exactly his marriage had slipped from partnership into polite estrangement. For 3 days, he immersed himself in data and strategy. The proposal he'd built was airtight, eco-friendly packaging, reduced freight costs, increased brand alignment with sustainability goals. He prepped the team, answered tough questions, delivered the pitch with precision. By the end of day 2, Foodstream's director shook his hand and said, "We're keeping the partnership. You just saved this deal." Bradley smiled. On paper, it was a huge win. But when he returned to his hotel room that night, the elation faded the moment he locked the door behind him. He sat on the edge of the bed, stared at his reflection in the mirror above the dresser, and waited for that feeling of victory to rise. It never came. What good is success if you have no one to share it with? It was around 10:30 p.m. when his phone buzzed. A message. From an old friend who happened to be vacationing in Rome. No words, just a photo. Bradley opened it casually at first. Then everything stopped. There she was with Monica, sitting at a small candlelit table outside a Roman cafe. She was laughing, eyes crinkled in that way he hadn't seen in years. Across from her sat a man. Well-dressed. Short beard. Relaxed posture. Laughing too. That face, it was Eric. The same Eric from her school. The same man whose late-night texts Bradley had confronted her about months ago. She'd dismissed it then. He's just a colleague, she'd said. You're reading into it. Now, there they were, sharing wine, smiles, body language so intimate it could only be described as comfortable. Familiar. Intentionally hidden. Bradley stared at the screen for what felt like hours. The sound of the hotel air conditioner was the only thing grounding him in the moment. He didn't cry. He didn't rage. He just sank. A quiet, heavy realization settled into his bones. She had chosen. Maybe not then. Maybe not in Rome. But somewhere along the way, Monica had stopped choosing him. The worst part? He wasn't surprised. Just confirmed. Bradley finished the trip like a machine. He returned to the office, presented the final report, shook hands with the board, accepted their praise. His manager congratulated him, even hinted at a future promotion. Bradley smiled, nodded, said thank you. But inside, he felt nothing. When he finally walked into his house 5 days later, suitcase in hand, the weight on his chest was unbearable. Monica sat on the couch, hair tied back, laptop in her lap. She looked up, barely smiled. Hi. How was Atlanta? Good, he said flatly. No questions about the client. No curiosity about the result. No pride. Just small talk. She spoke about Rome instead. How beautiful it was. How she needed that time. Eric's name never came up. Not once. No attempt to hide her detachment. No remorse. No explanation. Bradley listened, stone-faced, as she spoke with the cadence of someone recalling a vacation taken with someone else, trying to rewrite the memory as solo. But he could hear the gaps in her voice. The omission. The lack of warmth. He didn't argue. Didn't scream. Just nodded and walked away. That night, as he stood in the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror again, something inside him broke. This wasn't just betrayal by affection. This was betrayal by apathy. She hadn't just cheated him of honesty, she had cheated him of connection, of care, of acknowledgement. It wasn't just Rome. It was every unanswered text, every deflected concern, every moment she refused to show up emotionally. Bradley took a breath, toweled his face, and stepped out of the bathroom with a decision made. He descended the stairs, heart pounding but steps steady. Monica was still on the couch, as if the world hadn't tilted. Why was Eric with you in Italy? He asked. No preamble. No softening. She froze. Hands still on the keyboard. What do you mean? She tried, buying time. You know exactly what I mean, he said, voice calm but cold. Why did you spend time with him and not tell me? Was this planned? Was that why you went alone? She closed the laptop slowly, like that act could stall the storm brewing. I ran into him by chance, she offered, eyes darting. I didn't know he'd be in Italy. Bradley stepped closer, eyes locked on hers. Chance? You two work together. Talk all the time. And you want me to believe he just happened to show up in Rome, same time, same restaurants? Monica sighed, rubbed her temples. You're being dramatic. That's why I didn't tell you. You always jump to conclusions. I saw the photo, he said, cutting through her deflection. You weren't just coworkers having coffee. You looked like lovers on a getaway. And you didn't even tell me. That's not jealousy, it's awareness. She looked away. Her throat bobbed. A crack in her armor. You already know, don't you? Bradley asked, his voice low. Know what? She whispered. That our marriage is already over. Monica's eyes welled up. She brought her hands to her face, but it wasn't shock. It was resignation. Bradley. I didn't want to go alone, she said, voice shaking. When you said you couldn't come, I felt abandoned. Eric heard. He offered to go with me. I didn't plan it. But it just happened. He nodded once. That was all he needed. It wasn't an accident. It was a decision.